The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has unveiled its 2023 General Election Review Report with some recommendations for future elections. This is during a meeting convened by the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, with the resident electoral commissioners. The meeting focused on detailed issues of planning and reform, learning from the experience of the 2023 general elections, having released 524-page main report, as a matter of fact, on the general election, having released a 554-page main report on the election prior, with the conclusion of ownership elections and 9 out of 21 by-elections since the 2023 general elections. This is the most appropriate time to commence the implementation of the recommendations arising from review of the general election, according to the INEC chairman. The recommendations are those who already have the PVCs can still use them to vote. However, computer-generated slips issued to the voter or even downloaded from the Commission's website will suffice for voter accreditation. Early special voting for Nigerians who do not vote at the moment on account of the roles they played during elections, such as INEC officials, security personnel, journalists, and so on. Others are support of, diaspora voting, develop protocols for the cleaning up of the voters' register, among others. Now, this and more will be our focus on Nigeria Today. I am Eucharia Clinton. Thanks for joining us. Now, with me in the studio for the conversation is Ezenwa Nwagu. He's the chairman, Partners for Electoral Reform, and convener, Say No Campaign, Nigeria. It's a pleasure to have you in Nigeria Today.
Thank you, Kenya. Good to share the same.
And also with us here in the studio is Dr. Prince Chinedu Obi. He's the Director General, Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC. You're welcome to Nigeria Today.
Thank you, Eucharia. I'm happy to be here.
Now, I will start with you, Ezenwa. The report has been released by the INEC, have been unveiled by INEC, and of course, a lot of recommendations have been to get your perspective on this.
I thought you started with the trouble with.
Let me start with
Nigeria election, the politicians, and Dr. Prince is here. Well, so what's the report? It's a bird's eye view of what transpired in the 2023 election in the eye of INEC and those who the broad consultations that has taken place over the period of time. And it's critical because a lot of people were asking for reports, but the electoral process threw up, off-cycle. There are off-cycle elections that needed to be concluded, and most of those off-cycle elections have been, done. So it's good time to be able to take an audit, if you like, a perspective audit. But what is important for me is the people that comprise the review process, the resident electoral commissioners. And as somebody who is a participant observer in the electoral process, I do know that the disposition of the resident electoral commissioners contribute a lot to whether you have a successful election or not. So it's very important that INEC is engaging with them to harvest, their views also, because really, folks in Abuja don't do much. Is the guys on the ground in the states, and anywhere you have seen election go well, most of the time, especially from the INEC point of view, it has to do with the disposition of the resident electors. So that for me was important that they are able to sit together to look at these reports, and then, like the reports itself said, because they are in the front line, and they are the ones eventually who have the responsibility to carry out some of the reforms, especially those that are administrative. Then for me, it's a welcome development, and it also helps people who are interested in election issues. I often, Eukarya, make the point that the election is not an all-comers affair. A lot of people think that, you just jump into it, especially when you have public commentary in Nigeria. If everybody understands, but now this report is important, and what the task for us as Nigerians is to be able to get this report itself, look at it, and then make our own suggestions. That's how to improve situations like the one we have in our hands now.
Thank you very much. To you, Dr. Prince Chinedu. Like he said, like the politician, let's hear from the politician. What is your view of the recommendations that have been put forward by INEC?
Ezenwa is somehow also a politician because he works with us every day. And if you even listen to his own analysis, I can't but agree with him that I agree with his assessment. I am particularly happy that this is more like a self-appraisal coming from the Commission. And that shows that the Commission is also looking inwards to realize that beyond what anybody thinks, they too know that there's no perfect system. You need to see what you've done well, what you didn't do well, and how you can get it better. We're really encouraged with that. And if you look at the volume of the report, 524 pages means that a lot of work has been done with about 142 recommendations of things that we need to do differently. Some bordering on the ones that they need to do with themselves and the one the stakeholders will need to do. For me, that's the right way to go, and it gives us the hope that INEC is working towards giving us a better electoral process.
Okay. Now, back to Ezenwa, you've been on the ground, on ground to observe some of these elections take place. Now, before we go into the recommendations proper, how would you rate, some of the, the processes so far in of course, the recent off-cycle election that just concluded? How would you rate the, will I say INEC generally, before we go into the recommendations?
Well, I often like to look at INEC from the point of the role that it plays in the electoral process. It simply conducts elections. It doesn't go beyond that. Come out, conduct election. And what does that mean? What it means is that it has to look at the laws. It has to look at its own guidelines. It has to look at, so most of the time, and I always say that maybe 90% of the time, we look at INEC when anytime there's a conversation about election, but the interplay of other stakeholder activities contributes so much to whether you have a good outcome or not. I think that INEC is one of the most oversighted public institutions in Nigeria because of the role that it plays. When the Justice Uwais committee recommendation came out, INEC has implemented the one that has to do with them, about 69 of those recommendations. INEC had implemented it, meaning that it's willing to always make the changes that are necessary internally. The same INEC has been one Nigerian public institution that is not territorial in guiding his own staff and condoning their wrongdoing. Many of their staffs have been interdicted. Many are in court prosecuted for wrongdoing. What we find in other public institutions is to shield them, but many have been interdicted. Many have been sacked, whether from 2019 in fact, there are two professors in Akwa Ibom State one of them had to go to jail. The appeal court eventually. Then by the time you come to 2023, as we speak now, Sokoto, the resident electoral in Sokoto is not on seats as a result of, wrongdoing during the 2023. The Adamawa, Abia, they are all, so in terms of its ability to look inwards, I am excited about that. But I think that they need to also do much more in terms of internal governance mechanisms. If you look at the off-cycle elections, the graph has been, it's been up and down. We went to Edo. It wasn't superlative, not essentially because of what they did or didn't do, but in Ondo, it was a near excellent performance in terms of what INEC should do. Logistics was on time, result management was on time, and the other challenges that you have are not necessarily INEC's issues. But we don't need that topsy-turvy kind of situation. We need to have a situation in which the graph is as clear, in terms of what INEC does, But for me, is the ability, and that's why I think that as partners with INEC, that ability to always engage, and find ways to get things better is something that resonates with me, quite often.
Now back to you, Dr. Chinedu. We've seen some of the recommendations. One of way that at least was strikingly Nigerian, is the issue of the PVC, and of course going to the website, having a slip. I don't know, what is your thought on this particular recommendation?
I think it's a wonderful recommendation, and I pray to see it implemented quickly, because if you notice what happened in the last election, where you had cases of people who go to buy up PVCs with the idea of suppressing the election in some areas. A candidate knows that he has strength in one area, he does not have strength in other. His strategy becomes, go buy up the PVC. Now, if this intervention is made, you can buy up off the PVC if you like. All people need to now do is go and download something from the internet that still gives you an idea of course, BVAS will be used. So once your name is identified and you put your fingerprints, it gives them the whole information that you're actually a registered voter. So I think it will improve the participation in the election.
Well, I was actually thinking, of this particular, the slip thing. Is there no way it can be manipulated? The slip thing.
Even if you manipulate the slip, the BVAS already has the information. All the slip we need to do is to say, my name is Chinedu Obi, and you put Chinedu Obi, it recognizes with your fingerprint. That now gives every information that is required, that already imputed in the BVAS. So you can, even if you forge a slip and it's not consistent with what is inside the BVAS, it won't work.
Okay, now another recommendation here is the one of the early voting. And I know you were in Ghana recently, and of course they had early voting. I mean, how effective can that be here in the country, in our country?
There is nothing we cannot implement once we have the desire and not to subvert the process. In fact, the challenge with us is that we even have greater expertise than most of the places that we refer to.
That's correct.
Whether it's Liberia or Ghana, the truth is, what's their population? The Liberian voting strength is the voting strength of Imo State. As a country. Then Ghana is 18-point-something million people. That's Lagos, Kano together in terms of voting strength. So we have the expertise. We have the only challenge with us is the deliberate, the intentionality in wanting to subvert elections. And so once you take out, for me, most of what we need to deal with is attitudinal, not whether those things are, there are things that expand the democratic space. You cannot talk about a situation in which INEC officials who are involved in election cannot vote because, and they are citizens, their democratic rights to exercise their rights has been taken away. Civil society, observers, the media, and in fact, some political actors who also have a situation room, you've virtually taken them out of it. So the challenge is the mechanics of it, to deal with the mechanics of how can we do this effectively, and what's the will to do that. The technically is the expertise is available. So what we need to talk about is it desirable to have early voting? I don't think there's any argument. There's a consensus around the desirability of early voting. For the PVC you talked about, once you start biometric, registration, it automatically is a no-brainer. It automatically eliminates PVC. But because of the trust deficits in our electoral process, you have to put several layers of integrity process to be able to help you. Where did we come from? We came from somewhere. We came from temporary voters card, where you just had, and then we came to the permanent voters card. We came to smart card reader. what were the challenges that those things had that brought us to? So the biometrics, immediately we got the biometrics, and luckily enough for us, fortunately, sorry, we have the beavers posting 98% performance index in almost all the elections where it has been deployed. So that tells you that the beavers is effective enough to check voter identification theft and those challenges for which we introduced it.
Thank you very much. We'll take a short break now. The conversation will continue after the break. Don't go away.
The implementation of the ruling is also dependent on another aspect or another arm of government.
Nowhere in the world will allow under digital economy for banks not to be dispensing domestic currency in that economy.
What will make this one different?
We want to know what they do as occupation. All of these are attributes that are questions have been designed to investigate.
In a few days to come, you see that we are all around their own crannies and everywhere in Nigeria, telling people to cooperate.
Welcome to Nigeria Today. Welcome back. This is still Nigeria Today, and we're looking at the 2023 General Election Review Report unveiled by INEC. And of course, I have with me here in the studio two gentlemen. Now, Dr. Prince, we also have the recommendation of voting, the diaspora voting, which of course a lot of people have been clamoring for that. People outside the country, they want to vote. They want to be part of the electoral process. And now we have the recommendation that this, should be.
Everyone has been praying and looking up to the day diasporans will vote. And for us, we believe that it's one of the strategies to also deal with the thing you call vote buying and rigging. I don't know the politician that will have the capacity to go around the whole world looking for Nigerians there to bribe or force to. And of course, most of the persons outside Nigeria are, if you like, within the elitist group. Once you're able to get that number, and we have calculated it's quite a huge number. Nigerian, in my recent analysis, about 45 million people outside these shores of Nigeria. That in itself is higher than the total number of results we've had in previous elections. So if you have that number captured even to 50%, it will go a long way in increasing the number of persons that participate in our election. Look at the last election with 8 million votes. Someone is our president in a country of 200 and something million. So that population, we must do what we can that before the next election, we capture them to be part of our electoral process. It will improve the integrity of our election, participation, and everything you need to talk about credible election.
Okay, now back to you, Ezenwa. Of course, we cannot capture everything about the recommendation in this program because of time. There are quite a lot of issues like the election security, election technology, voting result management. But again, the issue of legal clarity in results management popped up in recommendation. How important is this, given keeping in view what transpired in the last election?
Well, sometimes I would just piggyback a bit. I think that in wanting to solve a problem, we can create more. And that's,
How do you mean?
That's what my experience has shown, that many times we don't allow a process to, electoral reform process in the National Assembly, our electoral law is the most reformed law as far as I'm concerned. So what am I saying? Legal clarity is this. Where the law has given INEC discretion to use manual or electronic. Now INEC now has a choice. Now when you take that power away, that discretionary power away, you box them into a corner, and that challenge is something we have to approach with a lot of
Caution.
That's the point that I'm making. So today, what do we have? We have upload. Take the results, EC8A, snap it and upload it into. So it's not a collation process. It is just is just an audit, if you like to use that word. INEC audits for itself. So what do you need to do? You need to be clear that if you want INEC to go electronic, we say so, and then follow the consequences of electronic, because it has a consequence. The Elon Musk that has taken, to the moon in American election was calling for paper trail. That tells you that even him, with all his investment in technology, does not yet trust that process completely. We have to approach technology with a lot of caution. And we are people who are excited. We're excitable about a lot of things, as if we don't know that it could have bigger consequences than we know. Dr. Prince talked about diaspora voting. 45 million documented or undocumented. We have to be very clear. That itself has this huge challenge. We have to be the mechanics. What I want is for the law to allow us to do diaspora voting, but the mechanics of it needs to. From Sudan alone, you can throw in 5 million, and they are Nigerians, and there is nothing you can do about that. In fact, if you remember that before we got to this point, there are states in Nigeria that the results had to wait until other results have come, so that when those results come, it helps. So the diaspora voting can become. So we need to be the debate. One of the challenges that I have is that we no longer debate issues deeply and thoroughly. Now the excitement of diaspora voting, the excitement of all of these issues. Voting. Once we throw all of it in, let us expand the democratic space by opening it up. But the mechanics of it, we need to have a conversation about it.
I am a believer that every situation comes with its own challenges. But between a manual process and an electronic process, I have a feeling that the electronic process would be better, particularly with the trust deficit they talked about. If we leave issues to happen around discretion, the challenge is that someone's sentiments, bias can, generate whatever you find. But if we are very clear in the laws to say it has to be this way, violation of it can null the process. So, but we are advocating total technology deployment in our election. Yes, it will come with challenges. Let's deal with the challenges.
Okay, just 30 seconds before we go. We have the recommendations. What do we expect?
The problem has never been recommendations.
Because there's been a lot of recommendations.
Let's stop it. It's not about... See, Taraba, right? From the capital, Jalingo, you can do 6 hours into places where this internet that you are talking about is not available. In Kebbi, there are places where you stop. It is camel that takes you to the place. When we talk about Nigeria, we have to be very nuanced. There are people who come to local government area to do banking in 2024. So it's not about the recommendations. It's about building the infrastructure of trust, and then building also the real infrastructure to be able to accommodate some of the changes and reforms that we are planning.
So how do we build this infrastructure of
Is
trust?
to have the first and foremost is for the politicians. You talk about vote buying, okay? But you saw your primaries. You saw the primaries of some of the major political parties. You saw the dollarization of it. So what are you talking about vote buying? Is it vote buying for the poor people who you give, or the bigger vote buying and inducement that takes place? So you need to challenge those issues more deeply than you are bringing to the surface.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I know you have something to say.
I was going to say I truly don't even envy INEC when it comes to our perception around them. How many percentage of INEC real staff participate in the election process?
Thank you very much.
Now you heard him talk about the recommendation. They do their own. The ones the other stakeholders would need to do sometimes don't happen.
Thank you very much. All hands must be on deck if this recommendation must, of course, be at the end of the day implementation, and just like you said, improve our electoral process. That is what we are all, working towards. Well, With that, we end today's episode of Nigeria Today. Very big thank you to our guest, Eze Nwanwagu, who's the Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reform, and convener, Say No Campaign Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time and your contribution.
Keria, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And also, we have Dr. Prince Chinedu Obi. He's the Director General, Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPA. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Always happy to be here.
And thank you for being part of the program. Remember, Nigeria Today is every weekday at 7:30 p.m. on NTA News 24. You can also watch this episode and others on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. Once again, thank you for being there. I'm Eukaria Clinton. Goodbye.